Everybody Loves Cookies by Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 8. What do we do with a drunken bird? That was a fine chat, Adam. It really wasn't. I still don't believe you. Believe what you want. That's your choice. We'll keep in touch. Oh, and do behave, won't you? I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings. Don't mind Raven. She's feeling a little angsty. Nothing a bit of strong alcohol won't help. A strange discussion. What do we do with a drunken bird? Up and Adam, Sleepy Beauty. The sun's starting to set. Ice cold water splashed across the sleeping visage of one crow brown one. Ugh, freaking cold. What the hell? The drunken huntsman jerked upright with an outrageous howl, arms pinwheeling madly as he failed to block an attack that had already taken place. Bleary red eyes squinting in the low light as he searched for his assailant, to no avail. Damn it, why? He spat a curse when fresh deluge soaked him to the bone, ruining his clothes and leaving him shivering. Up! I'm up! No more water, you son of a bitch! Now, someone cooed. Is that any way to talk about our mother? Damn it, he knew that voice, didn't he? Against his better judgment, the surly hunter raised his gaze. Sure enough, he found the bemused Raven waiting for him, an empty bucket swinging in one hand as she planted the other on her hip. Her grin was nothing short of smug. Of course it would be. His sister had a mean streak a mile wider, and he knew she'd bash him with that bucket if he didn't get up. So it really is you, in the flesh. She tilted her head to regard him as he stood, dark hair falling across one blood-red eye. You look like shit, little brother. Crow bit back a grimace. Yeah, he felt like it too. Why was that? Oh, a memory crashed into the back of his skull, and he rounded on his sister with a hiss. It was a good thing she left him outside. Had Raven dragged him back into the bakery, he was fairly certain he would have flung something at her. Of course I feel like shit, he cussed, stabbing a finger at his sibling. You knocked me through a damn wall. Only because you deserved it, Raven shrugged thoughtlessly, taking up a leaning position on a nearby tree. You were sauced out of your mind and swinging your sword around like an idiot. I'll have you know you ruined quite the touching moment between back there, braying and shouting like you were. You still beat the shit out of me? Crow stubbornly stuck to his guns. Yes, I did. Her brow turned stormy, and for a fleeting moment he actually saw her eyes flicker with crimson flames. And if you don't stop whining like a little bitch, I'll do it again. Suspicion reared its ugly head in Crow's heart as he scowled at his sibling. Flames? That hadn't been a trick of the light just now, but it shouldn't be possible. The Winter Maid was accounted for. Jimmy Iron Dick wouldn't let her out of his sight. Fall was being trained by summer down in Vecchio, and yet they'd all known spring was missing for some time now, hadn't they? Which meant, oh, oh dear, why was she hiding it? Did she not feel the need to? Did she trust him enough to confide in him? No, she didn't trust him. She'd felt safe, protected, secure in her position. Ray, he spat. What did you do? She lifted her chin defiantly. What I had to. What was she playing at here? She had to know he'd tell Ospen, didn't she? Yet there was no fear in her eyes. She looked sated, content, happy even. Crow didn't even want to dwell on it. Screw it. I'm too sober for this. He reached for his hip flask in search of comfort, only for his fingers to curl around empty air. Crow twitched, frowned, did a double take. Gone. His flask wasn't in its holster. In fact, it was nowhere to be seen. A flash of steel gleamed in his peripheral as his sister brandished his precious booze at him. Looking for this? Raven purred. Give it back. Nah, this is mine by right of conquest. She tipped it to her lips and drank deeply instead. Ah! She grinned a moment later and coughed heartily as she pulled away. You always did like the strong stuff, didn't you? I'm pleased to see your taste hasn't changed. Crow growled low and deep in his throat. Why were you always this much of a bitch? He'd said it more to get a rise out of her than anything else, but Raven didn't so much as bat an eyelash at the barb. Instead, she laughed at him, actually laughed. With a lazy toss, she flung his flask back at him, sending it tumbling through the air to land into his waiting palm. Maybe, she shrugged. I'm actually in a pretty good mood right about now. Count yourself lucky. Fine, I'll bite. Crow gave her a black look. Why did you come back? I didn't come back, she countered. I came home. Crow latched onto it. Home? Hm. Did I say that? A faint tinge of pink sufficed his sister's pale face as she tried to stand and thought better of it. Oops, she'd been drinking. Crow realized, watching her crash back against the tree again, drinking a lot, even before she'd woken him and snatched his flask. Don't tell him I said that. She granted him a small, almost lazy smile. He'd never let me down. I'd have to kill you. Something or someone had mellowed her out. He'd only seen her like this once before. Shit, he'd almost forgotten why Oz had sent him down here in the first place. Granted, he'd wanted to find out who had gone and gotten Ruby drunk. The stories varied wildly, so it was something of a 2-for-1 deal on that front. But Raven's words reminded him of his real purpose here. Never mind this maiden business. If that blonde bastard was back in town, well, things seemed to be said. Ozpin would need to know. They'd been good friends once upon a time before everything fell apart, and if memory served, he was responsible for leaving Ruby with quite the hangover. So old Whiskers finally came back to Vale, did he? He couldn't quite keep the shit-eating grin from his face. He in? I want to have a chat with him. Raven pursed her lips. Bad idea, Crow. Even for you. I don't want to kill him or anything. I just want to talk to him. Harbinger clicked ominously as he wrapped his fingers around the hilt of his weapon, loudly, repeatedly, with my scythe. As if to punctuate those very words, a deep how clang rang out behind the bakery. Huh? Crow blinked blearily and craned his neck towards it. The hell was that? Sounded like an explosion or something. Raven scoffed. Father-daughter bonding. What else? They've just started. Kick his ass, Para! A boisterous voice called. Crowbrow rose. And that his sister bridled, and here a touch of her old prickle nature finally crept back in. Is a demon masquerading as a girl? Don't be fooled, little brother. She held up a finger as though to ward him off. She's evil, I tell you, a devil in disguise. You need to kill her, Crow. That, or placate her with pancakes. It's the only way. Ray, she sounds like a kid. She can't be that bad. Evil! She slurred the word. Come and see for yourself, or don't. It's quite the show. She flounced off before he could hope to interrogate her, hips swinging. Damn it, Crow sighed and stumbled after her at a jog, following his sister out back. She wasn't kidding. A space that had been cleared in the dirt for a pair of fighters, something of an impromptu circle ring arranged with chalk lines and colorful flags. Someone had even gone so far as to erect a food stand nearby, alongside a pair of steel bleachers. Huh, he didn't remember those being there back when he'd stormed the bakery. Certainly not the brats that of but filled them. Go! Go, Pyro, go! Keen eyes took in a pair of young men flanking a girl with bright orange hair. The latter was currently screaming her heart out as hugged as a small fawness girl with antlers sprout from her head. Judging by the evil eye Raven gave them both, she wasn't fond of either. He didn't recognize any of them, but he did recognize their uniforms and those of the four girls sitting above them. Wait, were those his nieces? Go, Naruto! Crow twitched, only now recognizing someone in the brawl below. In the center of the ring, a young man and a younger female flew at one another time and again. The combatants didn't move, they danced. It was like watching a wild waltz of blood and flesh, and still, those two, if he didn't know better, he'd think they were trying to kill each other. No, wait, he took that back, they just might be. Crunch! A distant clamor behind him caught his attention. Raven stilled beside him, drawn from her stupor by the sound. Crow turned, followed her gaze, and saw what she saw, and frowned. Someone had left the lights back in the bakery. They'd been off a moment ago. He remembered that much. Wasn't that hung over to forget something simple like that? There was someone in there, moving around, someone that shouldn't be. Harbinger slid from her sheath with a silent rasp of steel. Omen joined in not a heartbeat later. In unison, the Brownwind siblings stormed back the way they'd come, weapons drawn. Crow couldn't help but offer one final curse as he opened the door. A pair of mismatched eyes poked up behind the counter to greet him, framed by wild hair that vaguely reminded him of a certain ice cream flavor. There was a spoon held tight between her lips. She tilted her head and favored them with a saccharine grin around said spoon. Damn it, Neo! An unfamiliar voice called as someone slipped out of the back room counter. Hurry up with the damn charges. Roman Torchwick saw them. Roman Torch wouldn't blink. Roman Torchwick hissed and fumbled for his weapon. Shit, shit, shit! Crow didn't even have time to attack. Raven beat him to it by a country mile. He'd only just stepped forward, only just readied his weapon when he heard his sister swear somewhere behind him. Then she drove the hilt into the back of his neck. His world went black all over again as he pitched forward into the floor. Before he passed out, he had time enough for one last curse. Damn semblance, me and my bad luck. Pyra was losing, and she was loving every minute of it. No matter how hard she fought, no matter what weapon combination she wielded, she found herself beaten back time again and again. Her arms arched, her heart pounded fiercely in her ears, her aura plummeted with every strike and counter strike that followed. All the while, everyone continued to cheer for her. Well, Team Juniper cheered. Team Ruby was firmly in Naruto's camp, much to her dismay. Go for the throat, Pyro! Really, this was all Nora's fault. She just couldn't keep her big mouth shut. The bubbly grenadier had gone and blabbed to Ren, who told John, who then said something to Ruby. Once Ruby knew about tonight's bout, she informed her team. In return, they'd been overheard by a curious Team Coffee. From there, it was something of a foregone conclusion. Father didn't like to be a huntsman. She'd been trained by those before. There was no grace or style to his movements, only cold, brutal efficiency. His style was wild and unpredictable, limbs bending at vicious angles to seek her vital and strike deeper into her defenses when he had any right to. He fought dirty, he fought like an assassin. It was both terrifying and thrilling altogether. Sweat flickered her forehead as she flung herself backwards. A few stray droplets flew from her skin and were summarily obliterated a heartbeat later as Naruto's clenched fist passed through the space she just occupied. A tiny smile wrenched its features as he chambered his punch and stepped in, ringing her shield like a gong. Her right arm screamed. Was this how her opponents felt when she'd fought them? Like prey? Even when he held back, her best wasn't enough to beat him, and it showed. She struck out at his face with the shield bash, but rather than evade like any sane person would, the blonde stepped in and slapped it away with bare hand. Pyra yelped and narrowly managed to insert him with her sword, but he batted that away too with an open palm. With bare hands. Flesh wasn't meant to strike metal, and she wasn't sure how he could just punch a shield or grab a sword without feeling pain. But he did. His fist cut dangerously close to her face. Wrapped metal knuckles brushed her cheek. A tiny cut opened there when the sheer force behind the blow sent her spinning away. Ordinarily, she didn't like to lose. No, actually, she hated it. But when her father rang her head like a bell, she'd never been happier. She was going to lose if this kept up. She couldn't remember the last time she'd lost. It's been, what, years? She wasn't sure. She vaguely recalled losing before, but not recently, not since her first tournament victory, not since the sponsors and the medium and all the awfulness that followed, not since she'd become the invincible girl. Now she was becoming batted about like a rank amateur. It was freeing, a reminder that she wasn't invincible, wasn't almighty, wasn't alone. Ears ringing, vision swimming, Pyra fell back on a trice and true tactic, if a somewhat dishonorable one. She flared her semblance, trying to use it against his metal braces. Everyone wore some form of metal on their person, be it weapon or otherwise, and father was no exception. A thorn of regret pricked at her heart, but she didn't relent. Victory was hers. Imagine her surprise then when her sire simply sped up. What? A tiny squeak of surprise fled from her lips, but it was too late. He was on her in an instant, barreling through her guard, ripping her sword away to ram an open palm in her stomach. With a startled gasp, Pyra fell right on her ass. Someone was laughing. It took the champion several seconds to realize it was her. That was grand, she grinned at him. I can't remember the last time I lost that badly. You weren't so bad yourself. When he offered her his hand, Pyra accepted it gladly and allowed him to hoist her to her feet. Relied a little too much on your bloodline there. At the end, though, his smile filled her with warmth, but the last few words brought the pang of mild concern. Pyra blinked. What was that word just now. Still, I didn't think you'd have the magnet release. Naruto pushed on, heedless of her confusion. Not a bad bloodline given your profession. I'm afraid I don't understand. The redhead blinked. Bloodline? What are you talking about? This is my semblance, polarity. Nope! Naruto shook his head. But nope! He grinned, and Cecil the sun caught his golden hair just so, making it shine. For an instant, Para saw how her father had fallen for him. Father was pure, for lack of a better word. She'd never felt such a thing for her own flesh and blood, of course, but she wanted someone like that for herself, someone who could smile like that, someone confident, someone who didn't care about her fame. Unbidden, her eyes strayed back to the bleachers. Until Naruto, he shattered her world again. That's not your semblance. He sounded so certain, so sure, that she couldn't help but believe him. You haven't unlocked it yet. Pyra caught herself from reeling, but that didn't make any sense. What's a bloodline then? It's something that you inherited at birth. Father stepped back, his word taking a lecturing tone. When I was younger, I was able to use the magnet release due to some unique circumstances. Frankly, I can if I feel like it. Blue eyes narrowed, and she felt her shield quiver in her grasp for a moment as he made his point. See, not a semblance. I don't have one of those, but you. His hand descended and ran through her hair. She leaned into it without so much as a second thought. You're going to be amazing once you unlock yours, Para. I just know it. Her cheeks warmed at the praise. Now, in the future, I'd like you to work a bit more on your form. That was amazing! Nora tackled her like an Urza and nearly crushed her ribs in a titanic hug as she babbled happily. You two were like wham, smash, kapow! I think she liked it, Father chuckled. Liked it! Nora dropped Pyro and rounded at him. I loved it. When do I get a turn? When you can make the perfect pancake, he countered quickly. Nora wilted, meaning. A distant commotion within the bakery caught Pyro's attention just then. What was that? Sounds like Crow finally woke up, Naruto hummed. Let's call it here for today. Don't think your mother would like it if I gave you a bruise. By the way, got your eyes on any boys here? Para felt her face redden anew. It was such a dad question that she didn't think to deny him an answer. Maybe she should have. Come on now, indulge an old man's curiosity. There is one, she answered meekly. That's so. Naruto's smile twitched just a bit. He got a name? John. A tiny bubble of frustration welled up within her as she gazed back to the stands. John didn't see her. He was too busy chatting animatedly with Ruby. The sight stung more than she cared to admit. I've been training him, but I don't think he's been aware of me or my emotions. John, John. Her father's smile grew 3 sizes that day, and not in the pleasant way. Maybe I should have a word with him. Those words sounded innocent enough, but for some reason they filled Pyro with dread. John wasn't strong. John was soft. John was squishy. Naruto would snap him in half. She had only one defense against him, a single sentence to defend her crush against all the horrors the whiskered warrior wished to visit upon him. Daddy, no! Naruto cackled all the way back to the shop. As luck would have it, Crow Bronwyn was not awake after all. They found the poor man sprawled on the floor, and Raven standing over him, one boot planted firmly on his chest, with her sword drawn. Had that been the end of it, perhaps they might yet have avoided the spectacular disaster that followed. Sadly, it was not to be, because Raven was pointing her sword at someone else, tickling their chin with crimson steel. Pyra's eyes followed the length of the blade and widened when she recognized the individual at the end of it. How could she not? The man's face was plastered on wanted posters throughout Vale. She knew that cheeky grin, that orange hair, that instinctive black bowler cap, and a flaring white coat. Oh, what the hell! Roman Torchwick hissed as he saw them. Nobody told me this was your place. Is there no honor among thieves? Is nothing sacred any more? She did not, however, recognizing the young woman certainly choking to death in Raven's left hand. cold red eyes gazed at the poor thing as her little legs kicked futile in the air, Miss Magician's eyes widening in horror as she gasped for air. Raven was smiling at her, and it was a cruel thing indeed, almost as if she was enjoying it, reveling in the act of slowly watching the life leave her eyes. Raven! Naruto snapped. Drop the girl. They were going to blow up your shop, came the growl. Don't care. The blonde slashed a hand through the air. Drop her. Now. Remarkably, the woman obeyed and released her prey. Against her better judgment, Pyra dashed to the girl's side and tried to steady her. Tiny hands clutched at her. She looked so small, so afraid, and yet Raven was ready to kill her at the drop of the hat. Why? Why was this happening? She didn't understand, and it terrified her, threatening to ruin what had, until this very moment, been a wonderful evening. I don't understand. The words all but trembled from her lips as she looked about, casting for an answer. What's going on here? Naruto blew out an angry breath. Well, this actually works out. Been meaning to talk to you, Roman, my boy. He spun a chair out for the thief. A clawed hand beckoned to said chair with graceful poise. Let's have a little chat. It was a command, not an invitation. What'd you say? Previews. Adam hissed and Blake hissed right back. What is this? Counseling, Naruto chirped. Now sit down, eat your cake, and talk. Vanessa huffed softly as she stepped inside. Such a lovely place. Needs a bit of sprucing up, though. Pyra noticed a large case slung over her mother's shoulder. You brought your weapon? Of course I brought it along, dear. Vanessa smiled sweetly. I've got a man stealing hussy to slay, or seduce. Whichever one comes first, I suppose. Now where is that little birdie? You're actually bringing your weapon? Raven regarded the ringed staff in his hand with a look of dread. Is that wise? Might need to break some bones, the blonde hummed. I'll be back in a few hours. Don't mind me. Sweetie, Vanessa sighed. Pyra's going on a date, not a mission. She'll be fine. Might need to break her date then. Naruto amended quickly. I'm more afraid of you breaking the damn continent. People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. I wanted to leave my old life behind, be something better, you know. Raven stood slowly, sending the chair spinning behind her. I was tired of fighting a pointless battle in a pointless war. I wanted to prove something to myself, prove that I could be better. But now, a hand flew to the hilt of her sword. I'm thinking I'm back. Now get your filthy mitts off my child and give her back, or so help me. Her red eyes burned with unholy scarlet flames. You will die screaming! It was a good plan. Naruto acknowledged their shout with a nod. Really, it was short, brutish, simple, but you made one critical mistake. You tried to take away what was mine. The gun rose in his hand with an ominous click. You know, I really don't like using these things, he remarked, gazing at the cold metal barrel with quite a disdain. They're so uncivilized, but you can't deny they're efficient. One shot, one kill. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, but Roman's my kid, which technically makes Neo my granddaughter. Now that I think about it, Cinder's annoying enough, but I won't deal with her. You, however, well, I just can't abide any more harm coming to them. He squeezed the trigger and a single round slammed into their skull. End of chapter 8.